welcome to an open meeting of the Conflicts of Interest Board. We have two items to discuss, and we will do that under the open meetings law of the state of New York. Two agenda items to amend rules. One rule, Rule 1-11, which concerns the amount of an ownership interest, which requires, which is prohibited under the conflicts law and is increased every 4 years to reflect the Consumer Price Index. And the other are some amendments to rules 1-01A, B, and C that deal with valuable gifts and the definition of valuable gifts. So why don't we begin with the first? And Yasang Yu, I guess, why don't you explain what it is that we're doing and let the board consider it?
Good morning. So every 4 years, the board is required to amend Board Rule 1-11 to adjust for inflation the dollar threshold in Chapter 68's definition of ownership interest. So for this year, it's calculated to be $55,000. The law department had requested some clarifying edits to the rule statement of basis and purpose. With those edits, the proposed amendments were published to the city record. We then held a public hearing and received no comments. So the board now has before the decision to approve this rule for final adoption. So
if we do so and approve it for final adoption, it's then published in the city record and becomes effective 30 days after the publication. So we've considered this before. It's an application of the CPI. Last time we increased the amount was in 2018, when it was increased to $48,000, from $48,000 to $50,000, and applying the CPI. Now we increase it from 50 to 55. Have any discussion? Approval, dissent? Okay, I move that we adopt this rule. Any objections?
Second.
Okay, second. Any objections? Okay, this rule is now deemed adopted. Okay, Chad, you want to take us through the next proposed amendment?
Sure. So these proposed amendments to Board Rules 101A through C are the last set of amendments to the valuable gifts rule in the pipeline, codifying the board's advisory opinions over the years. And Board Rules 101A through C define valuable gift, define an exception for the acceptance of valuable gifts under Board Rules 101 from family members and close personal friends, and include some definitions with respect to the application of sort of the broader valuable gifts rule. And these proposed amendments, which the board's reviewed in the past, would codify some exceptions to the definition of valuable gifts, such as unsolicited discounts that are available to all public servants, or prizes from raffles and giveaways entered into under certain conditions, and also involve some technical cleanup in adding line breaks to make sure that the rules read a little bit easier.
So we've seen this, this has come before us 3 times in the past, and we've looked at it closely, adjusted the language, and now I guess if we approve it, what we'd be approving is sending it on to the law department and the Office of Operations for their consideration and approval.
That's exactly right. If the board approves this version of the rule, it would be submitted to the law department, the mayor's office of operations. Often there's some changes that go back and forth there, and then provided those changes are mostly minor, it would proceed to a public hearing, but the board will be seeing this again before adoption, at least once.
Right, and of course, if there are substantial changes,
the board would have to review
it and consider it. Okay, I have a motion to approve sending this rule on to the law department and Office of Operations.
So moved.
Second?
Let me ask a question, if I could. And
okay.
I don't want to drag this out because I know staff and board have put a lot of time on this. I just had a little question on the top of page 5 of Exhibit 2. It's one of those that Chad mentioned, the discounts. and I know what we're trying to codify here, the discount that's available to everybody certainly ought to be available to government employees, and then city employees, and then discounts made available to all government employees, or indeed to all city employees, we've said, I think rightly, are fine too. And I think the rule intends to do that, but I wonder about the language here, because we've plainly also said a narrow category of city employees, like one particular department, we've suggested was not permissible. But this category of people, it's fuzzy language, and I know the intent here is to try to be as precise as possible without being overly generous or underly generous. I just wonder if, because I was struck by the language in the statement of basis and purpose, which I thought came a little closer. It said, it says unsolicited donates, discounts available to the general public. Yeah.
Would we begin at available to the general public? We strike to any purchaser or to a category of people. That language goes, then the comma, and then including all city or government employees. Would that address your concern?
Yeah, it really does. And if I haven't already overstepped this boundary into over picky, I'll go to ultra picky. If this would not be ultra picky, I'd switch government and city around, because the government is the more general one. Yeah, I think that's closer. Although I will concede that there are probably some subcategories that, silly things like I can't even quite think what they would be. But all left-handed people is probably narrower than the general public. But we wouldn't certainly. That's a category that might be included. But I'd rather the rule be a little stricter, and then if we have to, on a case by case, make some kind of exception to it, or this is not what we meant kind of thing. But I don't want to open, because the category just strikes me as potentially seemingly too permissive. And I'd happy yield to others if they think that I'm overthinking this, which is can be my want.
Well, I think we know what we're getting at.
Absolutely. I know what we're getting at. It's just a question of, are we saying it in a way that it's clear enough to the general public, and not, in this case, causing us trouble down the road where somebody comes along and says, look, this is a category. It's a big city agency. They're offering this to all. I don't want to be unsympathetic to any particular, but you get the idea. A sizable city agency, the discounts made available just to them. I don't think we said in the past that that's permissible.
Right, Wayne, I think you're right. Your critique here is, I think, is right. That category of people concept, I think, was, there's the AO that's about the discount that a bank was offering for people who worked, in offices in a geographic area around it.
In the general public,
right.
And that's and that captures that, and general public may not. So that's why my formulation conceivably seems a little strict. But that was an odd case, and that was almost well, I don't know, but it didn't seem to me that if one way or the other on that one. I think whoever asked that question, I want to. That was, I think, nearly 30 years ago now, much before my time at the board staff. But it was a relatively small geographic area, if I remember from looking at like a community board or just a smaller than that, and it was almost a who cares. On the other hand, some matters that are extended to a lot of people where it does seem kind of targeted, but they just happen to, because they pick a city agency, right? That's targeted in the way that one clearly wasn't. So you risk being too generous or too strict in the way the rule is written. My formulation may be a little too strict. My concern, category a little too generous. I think it's a coin flip. And so that's why I suggest that either is permissible. I kind of lean toward making the rule look a little tighter, just to not lead people into. We're struggling about hard cases, and I don't want to overthink this for the imaginable case, but or drag this out too much longer, but that's my thinking on it.
Wasn't arguing with you at all. I think what you're saying is sensible. So the language you proposed then, with Chad is unsolicited discounts available to the public.
The general public, I cribbed that from the statement of basis and purpose.
To the general public or to.
No, comma, including.
Including, okay.
To the general public, including all government or city employees.
Got it, okay.
If I could just, I don't know that the including makes sense.
I was thinking or.
Right, it's the general public, comma, government employees, comma, or city employees.
All government employees or all city employees.
Right.
Yeah, I think including is, yeah.
Sure. One second, I lost.
The including was there, I think, for categories.
Right. Okay.
You want to repeat the language now? Chad, maybe repeat the language.
I've lost my PDF.
Yeah, I can do it, I think. It's unsolicited discounts available to the general public, to all city employees, or to all government employees.
Okay. So category is not there any longer. And we're dealing with, I've seen these too, where some merchant in the civic center will give a 10% discount to all public employees or the like, which doesn't seem to involve any conflict. Okay, I'm okay with this. We all in agreement on the language. So there'd be no objection. Let's proceed and send it forward. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Wayne. That was
You bet.
very helpful. Okay, I guess that is the conclusion of the public portion of our meeting.
Oh, did the board all vote on that?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So I will then ask that the public session of the meeting be concluded.